The scent of lilies and impending rain hung in the air, a cloying sweetness that mirrored the knot in my stomach. From my hiding spot in the small vestibule of the church, I could see them standing at the altar. My fiancé, Ben, looked impossibly handsome, his shoulders broad and steady in his tuxedo, and next to him, his best man, his shadow, his lifelong friend, Leo. Leo caught my eye for a fraction of a second and gave me a tight, triumphant smile. It was a victor's smile, the look of a man who believed he had already won. He thought his months of careful sabotage had worked, that he had sown enough chaos and doubt to poison this day beyond repair. He had no idea that I wasn't just the bride. I was the executioner, and his secrets were my blade. Ben and Leo had a friendship that was the stuff of legend, the kind forged in scraped knees and shared secrets from kindergarten onward. When Ben introduced us, I tried to love Leo, for Ben's sake. But there was always something off, a dissonance behind his easy charm. He was the perpetual third wheel, the self-appointed guardian of Ben's past, and he seemed to view me less as a partner for his best friend and more as a hostile corporate takeover. His campaign to ruin our wedding began subtly, a series of unfortunate accidents and silly mistakes. It started with the venue. We had found the perfect place, a historic conservatory with glass ceilings and lush greenery. Leo, insisting on helping out, was in charge of delivering the deposit check. A week later, we received a call that the date had been given to another couple. Leo was devastated, theatrically so. He claimed he had dropped it in the mail, that it must have gotten lost. "I'm so sorry, Ben," he'd said, clutching his head in his hands. "I've completely ruined everything." Ben, ever loyal, clapped him on the shoulder. "Don't be an idiot. It's not your fault. It's the postal service. We'll find somewhere else." We did, but it was a soulless hotel ballroom, a compromise that felt like the first of many. Next came the invitations. My grandparents, both in their late 80s, never received theirs. Neither did my favorite aunt who lived overseas. When I flagged it, Leo's face was a mask of concern. "Oh my God, Clara. I used the address list you gave me. Are you sure they were on there? Maybe you forgot to add them?" He was so convincing that for a fleeting moment, I doubted myself. But I had checked that list a dozen times. Ben, seeing my distress and Leo's apparent guilt, played peacemaker. "It was just a mistake, honey. We'll call them. Leo's trying his best." His best seemed to involve a series of escalating fiascos. He booked a DJ who specialized in death metal for our engagement party as a hilarious prank. He accidentally spilled red wine on my wedding dress during my final fitting, forcing a frantic and expensive rush cleaning. Each incident was followed by a profuse, dramatic apology that painted him as a lovable, clumsy oaf, and me as a shrew if I dared to stay angry. He'd make jokes in front of our friends that were laced with poison. "Clara's got Ben on a tight leash. He's not even allowed to have a proper bachelor party," he'd laugh, knowing full well Ben himself had chosen a quiet weekend of hiking. He was framing me as a controlling bridezilla, a narrative designed to isolate me from Ben's circle and make Ben feel henpecked. The final, unforgivable act came 3 days before the wedding. It was the moment the fog of plausible deniability evaporated, and his malice was laid bare. He came to our apartment, his face ashen. He claimed he had gone to pick up our custom-made wedding rings from the jeweler, but that the jeweler had no record of the final payment being made. He said he had called the credit card company, and the payment, which I had made weeks ago, had been inexplicably canceled. He presented it as a mystery, a disaster, but what he didn't know was that the jeweler was an old family friend of mine. While Leo was in our living room, weaving his tale of woe to a horrified Ben, I stepped into the kitchen and called my friend. "George," I said, my voice trembling with a rage I could barely contain. "Did a man named Leo just try to pick up my rings?" There was a pause. "Yes," George said carefully. "He did. He also tried to tell me the order was canceled and that he was there to collect the refund. I told him the rings were paid in full and only you or Ben could collect them." "Clara, what's going on? This guy was really strange." The world tilted on its axis. He hadn't just tried to stop us from having our rings. He had tried to steal the money. He had tried to rob us. When I walked back into the living room, Ben was pacing, trying to figure out how to fix this, while Leo sat on the couch, the picture of concern. I looked at the man who was supposed to be Ben's brother, and I saw a viper. That night, I told Ben I needed some air and drove to the house Leo was renting. I knew it was crazy. I knew it was illegal, but I didn't care. I needed to understand why. I still had a key from a time I'd had to feed his cat. My hands shook as I let myself in. The house was quiet. I went straight to his office. His laptop was open on the desk. It was a long shot, but my heart was pounding. I didn't know his password, but I tried the first thing that came to mind. Ben's birthday. It opened. What I found was a graveyard of Ben's happiness, curated by his best friend. There were unsent letters, drafted to Ben, filled with a desperate, obsessive, and unrequited love that curdled the air around me. Leo wasn't just Ben's friend, he was in love with him, a A sick, possessive love that couldn't stand to see Ben happy with anyone else. But it was worse than that. I found a hidden folder. Inside were emails and financial statements related to a small tech startup Ben and Leo had launched 5 years ago. It had been Ben's passion project, but it had failed spectacularly, leaving Ben deep in debt and emotionally broken. He always blamed his own poor business sense. The documents told a different story. They showed a series of small, systematic wire transfers from the company account to a private one belonging to Leo. Over 6 months, he had siphoned nearly $50,000. He hadn't just let the company fail, he had gutted it from the inside and let Ben take the fall. He had sabotaged Ben's dream so he wouldn't become successful and independent, so he would stay close, wounded, and in need of his best friend's support. My tears weren't for myself. They were for Ben, for the years of his life that had been manipulated by this parasite. The failed business, the string of mysteriously failed relationships before me, the constant, subtle erosion of his confidence. It all clicked into place. The wedding wasn't the target. Ben's happiness was. I copied the files onto a thumb drive, my mind a maelstrom of horror and ice-cold resolve. He wanted to ruin my wedding day. I was going to ruin his entire life. Which brought me to this moment, hidden in the vestibule, listening to the organ play. I was no longer a nervous bride. I was a vessel of righteous fury. I walked down that aisle with a serene smile on my face, my eyes locked on Ben. When I reached the altar, I squeezed his hand and gave Leo a look that was pure ice. He flinched. The ceremony was a blur until the officiant smiled kindly. And now, Clara and Ben will share the vows they have written for each other. Ben went first. His voice was thick with emotion as he spoke of his love, his gratitude, his future with me. He ended, as I knew he would, by turning to Leo. And thank you, Leo, for always being my rock, my brother. I wouldn't be the man I am today without you. My heart broke for him. He had no idea how true that statement was. Then, it was my turn. The church was silent. I took a deep breath and looked directly into Ben's eyes. Ben, I began, my voice clear and steady. I have loved you from the moment I met you, and in front of all of our friends and family, I make this vow to you. I vow to be your partner in all things, to always have your back, and to always, always tell you the truth. I paused, then slowly turned my head to face Leo. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. I vow to protect you from those who would lie to you, I continued, my voice gaining strength. I vow to shield you from those who would smile at you while betraying you. I vow to build a life with you based on honesty, a life where no one will ever again sabotage your dreams the way Leo did when he stole $50,000 from your company and left you to believe you were a failure. A collective gasp swept through the church. Ben's face went slack with shock, his eyes darting from me to Leo. Leo's face had drained of all color. He looked like a statue, but I wasn't finished. I vow to guard our happiness fiercely, Ben. I vow to ensure that our milestones are celebrated, not sabotaged. I vow that our wedding rings will always be safe, and that the invitations to our life will never again be lost by someone who couldn't bear to see your family grow beyond him. Every head in the church was now turned towards Leo, who looked like he was shrinking. His jaw was slack, his eyes wide with horror. And finally, Ben, I said, turning back to the man I loved, whose face was a canvas of dawning, devastating understanding. I vow to love you with a love that is honest and fearless, a love that is celebrated in the light, not a secret, obsessive love that festers in the darkness, a love that would never, ever try to destroy your happiness just because it could not possess it. This is my vow, to love you and to protect you from him always. Silence. It was absolute, thick, and suffocating. Then, chaos. Whispers erupted into murmurs, then into frantic chatter. Ben stared at Leo, his expression crumbling from confusion into the deepest betrayal I had ever witnessed. Leo just stood there, crucified by my words, exposed under the stained glass windows. I didn't wait for the officiant to say a word. I took Ben's hand. "Come on," I whispered. He was in shock, but he let me lead him. We walked straight back down the aisle, through the sea of stunned faces, leaving the wreckage of our wedding and the ruins of Leo's life behind us. We didn't go to the reception. We drove to the coast, and walked on the empty beach as the sun went down. I told him everything, showed him the files on my phone. He was quiet for a long time. He didn't cry. He just seemed to deflate. As years of a friendship built on lies evaporated into the sea air, the wedding was a disaster. But our marriage, I knew, had been saved. We got married a week later at the courthouse, with just my parents as witnesses. It was quiet, simple, and honest. My vow at the altar was unorthodox, a grenade tossed into the middle of a sacred ceremony. But it was the truest vow I could have made. I hadn't just promised to love Ben, I had promised to protect him. And on what was supposed to be the first day of our new life, I had kept it.